Okay, so this is part 2 of chapter 1, the PowerPoint. The cybernetic model for evidence and innovation, it is on page 16 of the textbook. It says cybernetic models demonstrate an approach to systems analysis that specifically describes its elements, characteristics, and relationships within a closed loop structure that continuously feeds back upon itself. There is an inherent relationship between evidence and innovation that demonstrates the interface between the foundations laid by evidence and the reach for change and excellence that reflects innovation. Number 3 says structure and context give the frame for all action in a cybernetic process. Even though it is a closed-loop dynamic, it operates within the larger environment that is always in flux, forcing systems to continuously change and adapt. Cybernetic evidence and innovation model. So this is on page 19. The previous slide was on page 16. So models serve as a vehicle for integrating and interacting concepts, elements, and processes. The cybernetic model demonstrates the action of the integration and interface among elements and components between evidence and innovation, how they relate and interact, and how they feed back upon each other to mutually contribute to the dynamic nature of the relationships expressed in the model. Number 3, in the evidence innovation cybernetic model, the forces driving human activity, enterprise, socio-political, and economic, create a contextual framework for every activity within it and is influenced by and is responsive to the impact of these environmental forces. And this is just the environment forces complexity. So what it did was it took this section of the big diagram. So this slide is essentially just kind of taking this section and focusing on that, and that's what the next few slides will talk about. Knowledge creation and research on page 20. So this diagram here is on page 24, but this is discussing it on page 20. Healthcare organizations are in the knowledge creation and management business. Knowledge is one of the most important elements of health delivery and is one of the central critical tools that expresses the organization's work to impact health. Number 2, there must be a tight fit between the knowledge created and generated in one discipline and that aggregated when generated by all disciplines. Knowledge is grounded in evidence yet causes us to reach for innovation, requiring us to connect across disciplines in an effort to create sustainable outcomes. Number 3, I really like this. I'm a very firm believer in interprofessional collaboration and communication in general, but collaboration is the central functional component that links evidence to innovation and creates both the knowledge and generativity necessary to affect relevant change. Next slide is another piece of the diagram, the environmental forces complexity practice expertise. And it is found on page 28, and the information related to that piece of the diagram is on page 24. Practice expertise, translation to impact. Sound practice change reflects the rigors of good knowledge management, research, and comparative effectiveness processes grounded in sound evidence and informed by patient experience and impact. The use of good practice processes requires evidence-based dynamic support, the inclusion of collateral and collaborative processes, and collective wisdom to generate insights, algorithms, experiences, service approaches, and data that produce sound evidence and the urge for innovation. Number 3 says experience contributes to practice change when linked to knowledge management and the discipline of the scientific process. Experience generates insight and informs the practical translation of knowledge into into action. The next slide is another piece of the diagram before, and it is on page 30. The information associated with that is on page 28. Individual, personal, and cultural values and practices. Traditions that are deeply embedded in faith, family, culture, and history frequently defines the fundamental characteristics of people and their experience and influence what they do and how they do it. Cultural practices help to more fully inform the caregiving community of the specific circumstances related to choice and action. These considerations are incorporated into the establishment of evidentiary foundations and help inform the adaptations that incorporate traditional variables. Number 3 states care providers must accommodate traditions in the establishment of evidence-based foundations and reflect traditional norms and practices in the reach for innovative approaches to care delivery. And that's a really fancy way of stating something that we probably all already are aware of, that we have to take the patient's own beliefs and values and choices into consideration when providing health care. Certain people have their, really strong beliefs. Sorry about that. Machine gun fire. And so that was my son just playing around with his toys. But anyway, moving along, we're almost done. We've only got like 4 more slides. This is yet another section or slice of the model. And it is found on page 31. And the information associated with that, I believe it comes from page 31 also. The cultural framework for innovation and care. I really, really like the first one here. In all systems, organizations, innovation occurs because there is both an environment and leadership that reflect the context and generate the conditions in the drive for innovation as a way of life. The culture within your organization and the leadership, if they are devoted to a culture of innovation and evidence-based practice, it helps tremendously allow people to be innovative thinkers and forward thinkers and that kind of thing. Number 2, leaders are sure that innovation reflects broad-based creative norms and values, organizational innovation reflected in behaviors and practices, a commitment to service excellence, health improvement, and cultural sustainability. Number 3, the evidence-grounded innovation organization's leadership has the capacity to align environmental and organizational structure and processes, people and skills in a way that helps the health system recalibrate values positively, affecting the health service structures and culture. 27, the slide number 27 just brings everything back together as it was in the very previous model. It shows you all of the different aspects put back together in their modular way. And then slide number 28, this is the last slide, cybernetic interface of innovation and evidence. This information is on page 35. Evidence and innovation reflect 2 ends of the same continuum. Grounded in solid metrics, research, culture, and practice, evidence provides the rationale underpinning the foundations of good practice that point along the trajectory toward the potential for transformation, change, and innovation. Driving both evidence and innovation throughout their continuum is the leader faithfully executing all the components of the trajectory from vision and values, culture, leadership, evidence and data, process, movement, and measurement, and innovative practices which lead to new products and transformation. Number 3, The cybernetic cycle continuously engages the organization in knowledge creation and generation, positive culture change, ultimately resulting in care transformation and health of the community. Evidence and innovation become inextricably intertwined in constant movement toward human growth and transformation. And that's the last slide of our PowerPoint. So again, this is like real life situations here. I'm not gonna, go in and edit this audio or anything. If you guys have any additional ideas or thoughts about what some of the content really is trying to say, please feel free to share that, because it will help all of us. And let me know if you guys think this is helpful at all. And if you would like to narrate some of the other PowerPoints, we could take turns. You don't have to. If you want to, that would be great. Just let me know, and hopefully I'll be able to continue doing these, and it'll help all of us out a little bit with this evidence-based innovation book. It's kind of difficult to read and understand the concepts in here. So, all right, thanks.